What is your undiagnosed strange physical problem that doctors can't find an answer for? I had erectile dysfunction for about 3 years in my 20s. My sex drive was just as high as always, but I could never get it up without taking some Cialis. Not even a lot, like 5 milligrams, but if I didn't take it, I just couldn't do anything. I was stumped for a very long time, checked my testosterone levels, saw a therapist, started working out more, took vitamin D supplements. Nothing seemed to help. Meanwhile, I got to go to the bathroom half an hour before any sexual encounter to take a fucking dick pill. It was messing with me so hard, especially at that early age. 3 years into this whole ordeal, the back acne I have had since my teens really intensified, and I went to a dermatologist. Turns out I have had a raging bacterial infection in my skin the entire time. I had to take antibiotics for 4 months before it cleared up. But, much more importantly, within 2 weeks of starting the antibiotics, my dick was working perfectly fine again. Stood up on command, not a problem anymore. Later, I found out that the occasional nosebleeds I experience were also a result from a long-term bacterial infection in my nose, and got rid of that too. Life has never been as good. Sleep issues. I have done 3 sleep study tests and 2 tests for narcolepsy, and they can't figure anything out. I'm always tired, no matter how much I sleep, and when I have done the overpass tests I always joke with the techs that I'm gonna melt their machines once I hit REM sleep. When I wake up they say you weren't lying. I can tell you dream most of the night. I'm tired all of the time, no matter how much I sleep. I could fall asleep anywhere at any time if I just had a minute to close my eyes. If the alarm didn't wake me up in the morning, I could sleep straight through until the next morning. Probably unrelated, but also weird, is that I have spells of not being able to get warm. If I get one of these cold spells I could go stand in the Florida sun in a parka and still feel freezing cold. What gives? I have 2 lumps on the bottom of my foot. They have been surgically removed twice and still came back. Biases were clean. One podiatrist said they were probably impacted sweat glands, but 2 others said probably not. They had reasons I don't recall. Imagine 2 pea-sized rocks permanently embedded on the bottom of your foot. It hurts to walk most of the time. Caveat, I did get a diagnosis. I spent about 4 months in my early 20s with excruciating but intermittent joint pain. It was like glass shards grinding between my bones, my knees, ankles, hips, elbows, and lower back. I would wake up in the morning and cry while I was trying to bend my legs enough to step into the shower. I was severely depressed. I went to rheumatologists, and they had no answers. My inflammation markers were enough above normal that they believed me, but not scary high. They tested me for Lyme, hepatitis, RAP, etc. Turns out I had a bad seal in the trunk of my car, which created a puddle in the hidden area with the spare tire, which grew mold. Soaked in bleach, dried on a sunny day, and my symptoms went away slowly over a couple weeks. Funny thing is that they asked if I was being exposed to mold, but I didn't have any reason to think that I was, which led me to wonder in retrospect how many people don't know that is what is causing their problems. We finally found the solution for my weird medical symptoms. First I started having migraines 9 years ago, nearly every weekend. Then I started getting bad stomach symptoms in the morning after eating my cereal. Thought maybe intermittent lactose intolerance was a thing. Lived with that for years. Then my dad died, and it kicked things up a notch. Couldn't stay hydrated. Upset stomach and diarrhea daily. Terrible canker sores that made my whole face throb. Exhausted all the time. Terrible anxiety. The doctor gave me acid reducing pills for my stomach, but they were only helping a bit. So I started experimenting with my diet. As it turns out, I'm a celiac. After 2 weeks without gluten I started getting better. I remember walking up from a nap one afternoon and not having a headache and thinking, do people normally feel good when they wake up? Felt amazing until I accidentally glutened myself for 3 weeks by not knowing that the chocolate chips at Starbucks actually contain cookie bits. All my symptoms came back and now I'm working through the 2-week period after going gluten-free before I start feeling better again. I kept having recurring stomach pains at random with no recognizable pattern or trigger. First time was Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Thought I had just eaten too much and was in mild pain that night. Still felt a little off the next day or so, but went back to normal. Happened a few more times until last summer when I had to go the because it was so bad. Have had CAT scans, drugs, blood work, upper endoscopy and still no answer. It's like someone has lit a fire in my stomach and also a little like being a balloon about to pop. I never could connect it with a food or ingredient and it was never regular. Sometimes twice or more a month and sometimes I'd go 6 or more weeks between episodes. The last time was literally the day I found out I was pregnant and I haven't had an issue since, which is nice. I'm almost afraid to have this kid because I don't want to have the pain to start up again. 4 years ago, I lost feeling in my right hand from the wrist to my fingertips. It will lock up in whatever position it likes at the time, mostly closed in a fist. If not, I have to force it closed, so it's slightly more comfortable. And I lost all strength in the hand and wrist. I have a neurologist who, after doing multiple MRIs of the head, neck and shoulder, to rule out pinched nerves, milliseconds and the like, and multiple nerve conduction tests told me he can't help me. I have stumped 4 doctors, including one specialist for something to do with blood, who spent less than an with my while my hand was locked, and told me there's nothing he can do. About a month and a half ago I snapped something in my wrist, and the feeling has come back to the point where my palm is getting ticklish. Always had ticklish palms. We have discovered that acupuncture gives me feeling and strength. Also, when it locks, my great boyfriend has a way of massaging my arm from my shoulder blade to my fingertips to make it unlock. Very little strength, but the movement is back. I had patches of rough skin underneath my eyes. The skin started to itch when I was about 8, and I could never really explain how they felt to my parents. We went to the doctors who would prescribe different anti-itch creams for the patches to see if they would work, and sometimes they got me to stop, and sometimes they didn't. I got glasses simply because they would hide the patches sorta when I was wearing them. It took one visit to a dermatologist when I was 16 for her to tell me I had eczema. I have a rare condition called idiopathic intracranial hypertension. Basically my body produces too much cerebrospinal fluid and or doesn't get rid of it fast enough to keep up with the amount it produces, putting pressure on my brain and optic nerves. The funny thing is it was found on accident. My mom got a better job and I finally had decent vision insurance, so I wanted to have my eyes checked as a preventative measure, even though I've always had good vision and never needed glasses. The poor optometrist was freaking out and told my parents they needed to take me to the because my optic nerves were so swollen, which apparently is a sign of a brain tumor. 12 hours later I was the proud owner of a rare disease. No offense to doctors reading this, but there are some doctors out there that are too lazy to go above and beyond to find out what's wrong with a person. I told a former coworker/old friend of mine what I was experiencing with my left foot: burning, aching, tightness, severe heel pain, first steps hurt or any step hurts really, and so on. Well, this coworker is a really smart guy, and he said that it sounds like I have plantar fasciitis. So I stuck with it and told the doctors this is what I have and I want it fixed. Well, here I'm almost 3 years later, almost 2 years worth of trying to fix it and 2 surgeries in, and I feel so much better. Yeah, there's still some pain in the arch of my foot, but it's more tolerable now. Thanks to someone. Developed knee pain during sports as a kid. Doctors couldn't find anything, so I was eventually limited from all running sports. Had to quit soccer at 12. 4 years later in high school it was still hurting. Got a new MRI, my kneecap had slightly shifted. Q6 months physical therapy to get it back right. A few years later in college it is still hurting. MRI reveals nothing. Zip. My knee is perfectly healthy. Q6 more months of physical therapy and I'm back playing sports. Few years later again, and I've been living with knee pain every day, just assuming it's normal. But my ankle starts hurting more and more. Chalked it up to playing contact sports. Finally got an MRI on my ankle, and I had a ligament tear and a tendon strain. Fortunately no surgery, but a boot for a few weeks and physical therapy, again. First day of physical therapy I walk in super skeptical. It never helped before, why should it help now? Doctor asks me for my injury history. Keeps pushing until I'm telling her about how my knee hurts as a kid. Then the spooky part, she points to my outer thigh. You ever have it band pain? Yes. Points to my inner calf. And inner calf pain? Yes. Then she points to 3 spots in my back. Back pain in these areas? Those are the only places I have back pain. Turns out I had a rotation in my hip that I was likely born with. It caused all my issues, and I even had nerve damage in my left foot. 6 more months of physical therapy and it's now at a point where I can do a daily correction in my hip and I'm dandy. I'm also still in touch with that doctor because she truly changed the quality of my life. I have had 4 miscarriages in the last year. Have 2 healthy children from my only other pregnancies. No one can figure it out. Thanks for all your well wishes. I have done all the tests and absolutely nothing has come up with a red flag. I'm also in the reproductive healthcare field, so it isn't like I'm not asking the right questions or don't know how to advocate for myself. Thank you for the advice. All these suggestions are great for others who are going through this, and boy do I wish my situation were as simple as any of these things. When I was in high school, I woke up one morning with one of the joints in my finger swollen. No bruising, whole lot of tenderness. When I asked my doctor about it, they said it looked like arthritis. I was referred to Habits Raid, but my insurance wouldn't pay for it, so I never went. A couple months later, I woke up again, and overnight it had vanished. It shrunk back down to match my other joints and hasn't hurt since. Not me, but my mother. For context, she's always been extremely healthy, exercised every day, no smoking or drinking, just a total health nut. She's also one of the kindest and most compassionate people on this planet. My sister and I were 26 and 36 at the time of this incident and my father is remarried living far away. 4 years ago she complained about a pain in her hip. She chalked it up to a pinched nerve. After a few weeks, the pain had gotten worse. It had traveled down the rest of her leg and into her lower back. She described it as feeling like her nerves were on fire. She went to the doctor who ran a few tests, but found nothing. The pain progressed by the day. It was getting so bad that you couldn't touch her leg without her screaming in pain. It was getting stiff and more sore by the day. She would have to constantly move her leg around or else it would freeze up and go completely stiff. She couldn't fall asleep because then she'd have to spend hours painfully nursing the feeling back into it. At this point she knew something was very wrong. More visits to doctors, more tests, no answers. I could see her health degrading by the day. It spread to her other leg over a matter of weeks. She had to move to a new apartment with an elevator because she couldn't use the stairs at her current apartment anymore. Constant visits to the hospital with a myriad of tests only for them to say you're healthy, we can't find anything. Walking became extremely hard. We had to get her a walker. Since the hospitals were providing no help, we decided to go to a private clinic that treated people for Lyme disease. Once a week we would go to this clinic and have her hooked up to an IV with a chelation treatment. My mother would often cry and sob because she was in so much pain. She couldn't use the bathroom by herself anymore. She could barely support her own body weight. Chelation did nothing. At this point she was not able to walk at all anymore. She couldn't cook or clean, use the washroom, check her mail, nothing. We contacted our local in-home care services to get a support worker for her. I was in school full-time and working part-time. My sister was working full-time. We didn't have the resources to give her the care she needed throughout the day. So she was approved to have a carriage IV come in twice a day, once in the morning and one at night. The following is one of the most heartbreaking memories I have. I was at her apartment in the early afternoon bringing her food, cleaning, anything else she needed, but I needed to leave to go to school. I left her laying down on the couch with her TV on and a movie playing. She was always so kind and thankful for our help. I told her I had to leave, and she told me that's okay sweetie. Thank you so much for helping me. I'll see you soon. As I'm walking out the door I looked back on her, frail, thin, laying on the couch unable to move, knowing that no one would be back to help her until late that evening. I felt like someone ripped my heart into a million pieces. I love my mom so much, and she has done so much for me, and I just felt like I was failing her by leaving. I felt so selfish anytime I was not with her because I knew that if our situations were reversed she would be with me every second of the day. My sister called me a few days later and said I called an ambulance, I'm taking mom to the hospital. She can't move anymore. That was the last day my mother would ever be home. She was transferred to 2 different hospitals over the course of 6 months. Again, they performed dozens of tests, or load her up on medications. Nothing worked, no results. She was given trial medications and expensive treatments. A full year had passed at that point, and every doctor decided to just give up. They had no idea and they weren't going to bother to try anything more. She was transferred to a nursing home to simply exist. In the nursing home is where she started getting worse. Her legs were numb and paralyzed, but she could still feel her nerves on fire. She had to lay completely flat, because if her legs were bent at all she would be in excruciating pain. She's often described it to me as when the blood rushes back into your leg/arm/wherever, and you get that very painful static feeling. But this was all the time, and her entire lower body. Over the course of 2 years it spread up her abdomen, her arms and half of her face. She cannot use her hands anymore. It's been 4 years, and she is still in a nursing home, close to my home thankfully, where my sister and I visit every few days. Still no answers, no diagnosis, no hope for finding a cure. Throughout this entire journey she has remained the kindest and most compassionate person. She maintains a highly positive attitude and continues to be a loving and supportive mother to us. I'm sorry for the long read. There's probably so much more I'm forgetting. I love my mother more than anyone else in this world, and I would trade everything I have for her to have her health back. I have a rare condition called selective IgA deficiency. I have gotten sick constantly for 30 years. I'm talking about once a month, and it's really ruined my life. The thing is, no doctors even knew to test my immunoglobulins, and just kept throwing antibiotics at me, or saying it was allergies. When one doctor finally tested me, I realized my IgA level is at 0. Some people live just fine like this, but others constantly get sick, like me. Unfortunately, there is no cure for this, unless you also lack IgA. Then you can get transfusions, which is still odd to me. Worst thing in the world, it's like I have no immune system. Hard to keep a job, get sick with almost any germs, like I'm the bubble boy.